Alright, this is section 7.4, number 27, and basically you were supposed to solve the system, I'm sorry, solve the inequality, and then graph the inequality, and you had graphs to choose from. So let's start by solving the inequality. We're given the inequality 4x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 10. Remember that we can treat this just like it's an equation, so with the inequalities, what I'm saying, except we have one scenario that will occur, and it doesn't happen in this particular problem, but remember that if you multiply or divide, okay? If you multiply or divide an inequality by a negative, then what happens is your inequality changes direction. So I'm just going to draw a basic example. Let's just say our problem was negative 4x is less than 16. When we solve this problem, when we try to get x by itself, this is negative 4 times x. The inverse of multiplying is to divide, so we would divide both sides by negative 4. In that particular case, on the left-hand side, our negative 4's cancel. That's the benefit of inverse operations. I'm left with x. Now, however, because I divided by a negative, my inequality sign here will now change to a greater than sign. Greater than or equal to, excuse me. And then positive divided by a negative is a, excuse me, is a negative. All right, so that's our one highlight. Like, pay attention, make sure this doesn't happen to you. Otherwise, it works just like equations. So we're trying to get x by itself. So essentially, solve for x. We subtract 2, subtract 2. Haven't used the 4x, so we bring it down. Positive 2 and negative 2, greater than or equal to 8. Inverse operation of multiplying by 4 is to divide by 4. If I do that to one side, I must do exactly the same thing to the other side. At this point, my 4's cancel. I'm left with x is greater than or equal to 2. Okay, a couple things when I start graphing to keep in mind. Let me choose, give me just a moment, please. Sorry about that. When I start graphing, a couple things to keep in mind are, there's little side notes, is like things like this. I'm going to change colors here. Let's see if I can get black. Okay, a couple things to keep in mind is this. Open parentheses. So either one of these parentheses would go with um, open circle on my graph. Brackets, meaning like closed or included. So this would be like a less than symbol or a greater than symbol. This would be a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to. We would use brackets, which in turn on the graph correspond with closed in circles because it's saying including. Now my interval notation here is this. I want all the x's that are greater than or equal to 2. So I want to start at 2. So I include 2. The bracket means include. And I want to go to positive infinity because that would be all the x's. So if I thought about my interval notation here, that means my list would be like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., etc., all the way to positive infinity. Whereas if I change my interval notation and my answer, this isn't the case, but if I had open parentheses 2, comma, infinity, then in that case there, what we would have is we have a scenario where we have x greater than positive 2. And so notice we don't have the equal to part. And that means in this case, we don't start at 2, we start at 3. So this would be like 3, 4, 5, 6, dot, 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 all the way to positive infinity. One last note is infinity is not a fixed location. So since it's not a fixed location, we use an open bracket on it. That's one key thing to remember. Infinity is not a fixed location. You can always add one more on to wherever the biggest possible spot is and get to another larger number. So infinity is a theoretical location that we call infinity. We stick a symbol in there for it. All right. So with that said, let's go on and graph this. Clean this up a little bit and move this down so I got a little more room. And here we go. Let's change colors so it stands out a little bit. Let's go to red. All right, so we need to start at 0 or at positive 2. So I'm just going to place a 0 on here so we have an idea of where we are. And I'm going to go 1, 2. So here I am. I'm at positive 2. Because I'm at a fixed value, because I'm going to include 2, I'm going to put a closed-in circle. And then I'm going to point my arrow towards all the greater than, because that would be 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So there's a little problem for you. This is section 7.4, number 27, in the MyMathLab suggested homework.